everyone, and thank you to Sharon, thank you to Katrina, thank you to all the volunteers and the team at Safe Ireland, and thank you so much from my heart to all of the speakers and everyone who's here for this event. It's been some of the most impactful 2 days of my life, and I also want to thank all the beings across time, across space, who have stood for this vision. And again, as a reminder that we are not the first and not the last. So I offer these words today from my heart and from my passion for the innate capacity that we all hold to heal. And I think of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, and she references that scars don't have to be proof that we were wounded, but they can be proof that we healed. And so one of the things that I'm so passionate about in the world is we all have a call to make an impact, but how do we do that? And for me, it's really been about bringing movement, ritual, community building, and pilgrimages to women. And instead of saying that I created Koya, a better way of saying it would be that Koya has been creating me. So it's a consciousness that's arising in all of us, that's arising around the world. And as this feminine embodiment pulse comes up, Koya is just one name and one face of it that I'm honored to steward. And so what Koya is it's a movement system that is based on the idea that through movement, we remember our essence is inherently, can't be taken away, can't be given. Our essence is inherently wise, wild, and free. So wise, wild, and free also draw reference to the movement forms that we'll do in a Koya class. So wise calls on the wisdom traditions of yoga or any contemplative practice that connects us into our inner wisdom. Wild is about that authentic expression that's available to us through dance. Not necessarily performance dance, more like I'm folding my laundry and I wasn't planning on having a dance party, but there was something about a song that came on. There was something about the moment that all of a sudden I expressed how I felt through my body. And so many of us today, as we hear these speakers or we're having these side conversations, we might have a moment where we're like, wow, I really said exactly what I meant to say. I really articulated how I felt, what I was thinking. How do we reclaim the body language to actually move and embody our spirits and our experiences in a way that is also authentic, that is actually an expression of how we feel? So when I'm talking about wild, I'm actually just talking about being honest, about being true, like that energy that's in nature, an animal without inhibition. And how interesting that we live in a time where to be wild is to be honest. To be honest is to be wild. It's very wild and revolutionary to be in a room with everyone actually telling the truth of what they think and what they feel. Free is really, for me, about expanding our capacity for joy. And many of us are here as survivors, myself included, where it can be very difficult to be in your body. And then there's just, the challenge of having a human body where it can be difficult. There are healing adventures that we go on. But in Koya, I try to introduce the idea that what we look for can also be what we see. So we start to look for the places where it could feel a little bit better and expand our capacity to be there. So movement is really offered as a metaphor here, as an expression of who we are. And so I invite you to take a moment and imagine the last time that you saw a sunset. And maybe your whole body exhaled. To imagine the last time that you were caught up in the contagious laughter of a child, just that moment of pure delight. A moment where you felt so fulfilled by the work that you were doing in the world. A moment where you felt the warmth of your lover's body in bed. A moment where you felt the sense of adventure, and whether you were out on the road or in whatever way it was to you, you were out to explore. A moment where you caught up with a friend and at the end of your conversation, you actually sincerely felt like things were going to be okay. So there are these times where we can move out of this intellectual judging, analyzing, worrying into the experience of embodied presence. And so as I'm offering on a surface level what might seem like a movement class, what I'm really trying to encourage us to notice is, what does it feel like when we actually feel like ourselves? When we feel authentically connected to who we are? Because I really believe that this healing path is when we merge with our essence and the present moment. So with that, we live in the turning of the ages. There's transformation that's happening in our inner world, in our outer world, and it's happening so quickly. And so what are the tools and the practices that bring us into this place? Koya will be celebrating its 10-year anniversary in March. And in that time, I've trained about 600 teachers in 20 countries. There's even 2 in Ireland. And so there are women who are gathering, and they're doing these movement practices, and they're doing these rituals. And with so many of the statistics that we've heard, I'm always aware when I'm training teachers that we're also really treating trauma. We're trying to create these safe and sacred places for women to remember the essence who they are, honor it, stand for it, and stand for each other. And so in that, one of the most important things I talk about is trusting the physical sensation of truth in your body. So you could imagine a pregnant woman, but you don't have to imagine very much, because I'm a pregnant woman. I'm 5 months pregnant right now. And so as a pregnant woman, or anyone who's pregnant, there's this trust in the body's intelligence to create life. I don't have to make a to-do list that says, make liver, check on left or right ear. There's just, it happens, and all of a sudden I trust the body to do this, to create life. And in that moment, the body is so trustworthy. But as we navigate our lives, is it possible that our body can not only be trustworthy to create life, but to guide us through it? And so these are some of the questions that I really encourage people to notice is, do you trust your own body? And if you listen deeply to people's stories, as many of us have today, you might have heard a thread where it's like, I felt this, but I didn't listen. And so I really encourage you to question any of the conditioning that would suggest that your body's inner wisdom is not trustworthy. And it can be the smallest things of, do I go right or left? Do I order this or that at a restaurant? Do I, take on this work project or that work project? But to be able to self-reference and notice, what is the truth that is coming through in my body, and to use your body like a tuning fork that you want to resonate with. So when you live this way of trusting your body, it's not that you don't experience, the challenges. It's not this magical way to escape pain. But at least one of the challenges that you don't have to face is that you didn't honor yourself. And so this is something that is not meant for any of us to be hard on ourselves or feel badly about in the past, but it is to recognize that this is a cultural inheritance where the body is seen as not trustworthy, and to reclaim that, and to also just do it as an experiment, for a day or a week or a month. Just like before I make some decisions, I'm gonna check in and I'm gonna notice how my body feels. And I'm gonna use that information to guide me. And as much as we hear in so many of the stories is, I felt something in my body and I didn't listen, there's so many stories as well in our own lives and that we hear where someone did. And it's like, and again, it doesn't mean that just by listening to your body, all the rewards of life come, but at least one of the rewards is you lived the authenticity of your own life. You stayed true to the essence of you. So one caveat in this is, when do you listen to your body? Because there are times when we can become triggered and we can go into that fight, flight, freeze, or that super strategic response. And so how do you differentiate when to listen to the body? Because when you're in that place of pure strategy or survival, I would say by any means possible, if there's any way that you can calm yourself down and come into a place of rest, restoration, communication, movement. We did the shaking yesterday for those of you who were here, but it really is part of the responsibility of having a human body to know yourself well enough to know the things that bring you back to center and to have them and to practice them. So when you begin this path of trusting your body, some of the things that start to arise are you might feel some numbness. You might not feel a lot. It's like, how do I feel? I don't feel anything. I'm way too busy to feel things. It's like I'm in and that's common. One of the main reasons for numbness is exhaustion. There's this other part of resistance, like I don't want to feel because it's painful. There's another part where we can feel a lot of strong, stuck emotion. So is what I've found in working with women's groups over the last 10 years is that when we start to feel, one of our first interfaces is our grief. And that we have to expand our capacity, and I believe that we can, to stay present in that place of grief. And so many poets and so many spiritual practitioners talk about our capacity for our grief is our capacity for our joy, because it is our capacity to feel. And there's no such thing as selective feeling. You don't just get to have the joy. You don't just get to have the pain. By feeling, one is feeling. So I really honor all of the work that we're doing here to come into this place to honor the feminine and honor the intelligence of the body and honor the authentic emotional experience that we have that is our felt experience of our life. As we start to feel, I believe it is not through the mind, but through the body that we expand our capacity to hold space for paradox, where two opposing things can be true at the same time, where the grief and the joy can live there simultaneously. And in so many of our lives, this has been our path. As we look at our world, this is our path. But again, it's very difficult for the mind that compartmentalizes things as this or that to feel the wholeness, but the body can. Another important part about encouraging people to feel and to embody that I offer through the work that I do is all about choice. So when I'm teaching movement, you might remember from this morning, and let's say it's something as simple as a hip circle. Say there's no way you can do it wrong. The way you know that you're doing it right is that it feels right to you. It can be small, it can be big, it can be fast, it can be slow. And this might seem, like nothing of major importance, but what I'm doing throughout a class is consistently giving women an invitation to choose how they want to move their bodies and to reclaim the agency that they have and to do it the way that they want to, because from the trauma research that I've been shown that this is one of the most important parts, that in those moments of violence or trauma, one of the most upsetting things is the choice was removed. So while the body holds a lot of trauma, in these small daily moments and movements, we start to reclaim and choose how we want to move, what feels good to us. And this really requires the ability to notice how it feels. So dance for me has been my catharsis. I grew up in a home with domestic violence. I've experienced sexual violence growing up in the world, and for me, it has always been this way where I was able to feel how I felt, but also noticed that as I felt it, it moved. And I also found that as I moved my body, there was this returning back to who I was, that I could stand in my earnestness. And like we've heard so many times, is that this isn't something that defines me, this is something that I experienced. And so, like so many of us on the path of what is commonly called in spiritual circles, the path of the wounded healer, is you learn how to alchemize your pain into service. You learn how to take the things that have been helpful, that have been supportive to you, and you offer them to others. So it's from this place that I become so passionate about movement and about trusting your body and reclaiming choice and agency, because it's been my path to healing. And so as we engage in sacred activism, there's this opportunity to really stand up and do our own healing work, not only so that we can experience this, and for a lot of people, I have to say, it's sometimes treated like it's a luxury, but I would say that this is a necessity. And how do we make more healing tools available to more communities is another question I'd love for us to be with. But one of the main things is that when I'm across from someone one-on-one or one to all of you, I can stand for healing. I can stand and I can say that I believe that healing is possible because I've experienced it. And so I close now by saying, is there any way that we can bring more embodied awareness into our activism, into our healing path? Because while we can get in conversations around ideology, when we come into our body, the most common things that happen are presence, compassion, empathy, and the reconnecting to our humanity. So I believe that also in our body, we can feel that a safer world is possible. And so I invite all of you that feel that knowing in your body to stand with it and for it, as you obviously are in being here. But as you move forward, I wish for all of you to have the courage to hold this oracular activism, holding the vision along with doing the work, honoring the feeling in your body, to embody your wise, wild, and free soul so that you know that you always have access to your inner wisdom. You have this authentic creative expression to give, and also to be committed to expanding your capacity for joy. Thank you so much.